I never expected my husband's closest friend to be waiting for me alone in that dim parking garage. What he wanted wasn't what I first imagined. What he needed was something far more surprising, and it changed how I understood myself. Before I tell you what happened, let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. It helps more than you know. That evening had already been long. I'd stayed late at the community center after finishing paperwork, and by the time I stepped into the garage, the place felt hollow, echoing every footstep. My breath made faint clouds in the cool air. I clicked my keys nervously, trying to locate my car among the concrete pillars. Then I saw him. Daniel, my husband's longtime friend, stood near my car with his hands tucked in his jacket pockets, as though he'd been waiting a while. The overhead lights flickered softly above him. For a moment I just stared, unsure whether to be startled or relieved. Daniel wasn't the type to appear anywhere unannounced. He lifted a hand in a quiet greeting. "Hey," he said, his voice calm but carrying something underneath. "I didn't mean to spook you." "You surprised me," I admitted, stepping closer. "Is everything all right?" He nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Daniel was usually steady, the kind of man who didn't let emotions bubble up to the surface. Tonight, however, he looked as though something had unsettled him. His shoulders, normally comfortably squared, were slightly tense. His eyes avoided mine as though he was wrestling with the right words. "I wanted a moment," he said, "just to talk. I didn't want to do it at your place. It didn't feel right." The garage was quiet except for the distant hum of a ventilation fan. I felt an unexpected wave of concern, not fear, not confusion, just concern. Daniel had been part of our life for years. He was at our cookouts, our celebrations, even the occasional quiet weekend dinner. Seeing him like this made me pause. "What's going on?" I asked softly. He finally met my eyes. There was no anger, no discomfort, just a kind of heaviness that made my chest tighten. "I didn't want to bother your husband with this," he said, "and I didn't want you to hear it from someone else." My hand tightened on my keys as I took a breath. The lights buzzed overhead. A car door slammed several floors up, and the sound traveled like a reminder that the world was still turning outside our little pocket of stillness. Daniel stepped closer, still keeping a respectful distance, but close enough that I could see the signs of unease. "I've been keeping something to myself for a long time," he said. "And today, it finally caught up with me." I didn't know what he was about to reveal, but in that moment, something shifted. This wasn't a man interrupting my evening. This was someone reaching out, hoping I'd understand, hoping I'd listen. "All right," I said, steadying my voice. "I'm here. Tell me." He exhaled slowly, as if bracing himself, and that was the moment I realized this night would become a turning point, one I never saw coming, one that would quietly reshape the way I looked at Daniel, and even myself. The moment stretched between us, quiet but weighted, as if the entire parking garage was holding its breath. I leaned gently against the side of my car, giving Daniel the space he seemed to need while also showing I wasn't going anywhere. The air felt cooler now, curling around us like a whisper. He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture I'd only seen him make when something truly troubled him. "I haven't been myself lately," he said, "and I didn't want anyone thinking I was avoiding them, especially you and your husband." I watched him carefully. "We figured you were busy with work," I said, "but you know you can talk to us." He nodded, but his expression told me he didn't entirely believe that, or maybe he wasn't sure how to begin. Finally, he took a slow breath. "I've been feeling out of place," he said, "like I'm drifting. I've known your husband for decades. I've known you long enough to see how grounded you both are. And somewhere along the way, I started feeling like I was losing my own direction." His words surprised me, mostly because I'd never seen Daniel vulnerable. He was the type who fixed broken cabinet doors without being asked, who always insisted everything was fine even when it clearly wasn't. "I've noticed you pulling back a little," I admitted, but I didn't want to push. "That's why I waited for you here," he said. "I didn't want an audience. I didn't want your husband worrying. I just needed someone to hear me before I started making decisions I might regret." The sincerity in his voice caught me. He wasn't asking for comfort in any dramatic way, just understanding. And that somehow made the moment feel even more meaningful. "I'm listening," I said. He shifted, leaning lightly against a pillar. "I've been thinking about leaving town," he confessed. "Starting fresh somewhere else. I thought maybe that would fix whatever's been going on inside me. But then I realized I haven't talked to the people who matter. Not really. Not honestly." The faint echo of a car driving on a lower level rumbled through the space. It grounded us in reality, yet the two of us felt set apart from the rest of the world. "Why tell me first?" I asked quietly. Daniel looked at me with an earnestness that startled me. Not intense, just deeply honest. "Because you always see more than you say," he replied. "And you don't judge. You notice things your husband misses. I needed that tonight." I felt something soft settle in my chest, not romantic, not confusing, just human. The connection of two people who, after years of polite conversations and shared dinners, finally stepped into a deeper understanding. "I don't think leaving will solve what you're feeling," I said. "But feeling lost doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." He lowered his gaze, as though absorbing the words. "I didn't want to feel like a burden." "You're not," I said. A small, grateful smile touched his face, the kind that comes from being seen in a way he didn't expect. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The garage hummed around us, distant, steady, almost comforting. Then Daniel said, "There's more I want to tell you, if you're willing to hear it." And something inside me knew that whatever came next would take us even deeper into unfamiliar territory, emotionally, quietly, respectfully, but undeniably significant. Daniel's words lingered in the stillness, and I found myself straightening slightly, preparing for whatever truth he'd been carrying. The garage lights hummed overhead, casting long pale shadows across the concrete floor. It struck me how unusual this was. Two familiar people suddenly speaking with an honesty we'd never touched before. "I'm here," I said, my voice steady but warm. "Go on." He inhaled slowly, as though gathering courage one careful breath at a time. "I've been feeling disconnected from my own life," he said. "Not just work, not just the day-to-day routine. It's like I've lost my sense of who I'm supposed to be." I nodded, giving him space to continue. He wasn't rambling. He was peeling back layers that he kept sealed for years. He glanced toward the entrance ramp, as if watching for someone who wasn't there. For a long time, I thought I'd eventually settle into something meaningful. A family, maybe. A home that felt like mine. But it never happened. And the older I get, the more it feels like the ground is shifting beneath me. Hearing this from Daniel, calm, dependable, always composed Daniel, felt strangely disarming. It reminded me how often we assume people are fine simply because they appear steady. "Feeling unanchored doesn't mean you've failed," I said. "Life doesn't follow one path for everyone." He lifted his eyes to mine. "I know, but it's hard not to compare. When I see you and your husband—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You two built something steady. And sometimes I worry that I waited too long to build anything of my own." I felt the weight of his confession settle between us. Not heavy, not uncomfortable, just real. A truth shared without expectation. "I never knew you felt that way," I said quietly. "Because I didn't want anyone to," he replied. "I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I just Needed someone to understand that I'm tired of pretending everything is fine. His voice didn't shake, but there was a rawness in it, a kind of honest fatigue that I recognized more than I cared to admit. You're not alone in that feeling, I said. Everyone reaches a point where they question where they're heading. Even me. He looked surprised. You? Of course, I said. There are days I wonder if I've grown too comfortable, or if I've missed out on parts of myself by trying to keep everything running smoothly. That seemed to land with him in a way my earlier words hadn't. He exhaled, a slow release, as if knowing he wasn't the only one lifted some invisible burden from his shoulders. I guess I always thought you were the grounded one, he said, the one who had everything figured out. I smiled gently. No one has everything figured out, Daniel. Not at 40, not at 60. We're all just trying to find meaning where we can. He leaned back against the pillar, his posture relaxing for the first time that evening. I didn't expect to tell you all this, he admitted, but I'm glad I did. I stepped a little closer, not out of impulse but out of understanding. Thank you for trusting me. Something softened in his expression, an unspoken appreciation, a quiet acknowledgement that the moment mattered. I'm not done, he said after a long silence. There's something else I've been holding on to. Something I should have said years ago. A gentle tension rose in the air, not uncomfortable, but deeply human, as though the next words would shift the ground under both our feet. Whenever you're ready, I said, steadying myself. He took a breath, a long, deliberate breath. And then he began. Daniel hesitated before speaking, and in that moment the entire garage felt suspended in quiet anticipation. The hum of the overhead lights softened, as if even the building itself leaned in to listen. I folded my arms gently, not out of impatience but to steady myself. I could sense this was the part he'd been circling around all evening. He looked down at the concrete floor, then up at me with an expression both humble and sincere. I should have told you this a long time ago, he said, but I never wanted to cause trouble. I never wanted to make anything uncomfortable between us. I just need to say it before I decide what comes next. My pulse picked up slightly, not with alarm, but with the awareness that whatever he was about to share had been carried inside him for years. I've always respected your marriage, he began. That never changed, but somewhere along the way, I found myself looking to you for guidance, for steadiness, for perspective. You've probably never noticed it, but your calm has been an anchor for me more times than I can count. I let the words settle. They weren't inappropriate, not even close. They were simply honest, earnest, the kind of confession a person finally speaks when silence has become too heavy. You mean a lot to both of us, I said softly. He nodded. I know, and I care about you both. That's why I didn't want to say anything that could be misunderstood. He paused, choosing every word with care. But I've admired you, deeply. Your kindness, your strength, the way you see people. I never wanted it to be anything complicated. It wasn't about wanting more. It was about wishing I could find someone with your sort of presence in my own life. A warmth spread through me, not romantic, not confusing. It was the warmth of being genuinely appreciated, of realizing that simply being oneself had made an impact. Daniel, I said, there's nothing wrong with feeling inspired by someone, or grateful, and there's nothing wrong with saying it. His shoulders relaxed noticeably, as though he'd been bracing for judgment that never came. I just didn't want to leave town without being honest, he said. I needed you to know that the reason I've been so lost isn't because I'm running from anything. It's because I'm trying to figure out how to build a life that feels meaningful. And I didn't want to do that without acknowledging the people who helped me stay steady along the way. I stepped closer, not out of emotion but clarity. You don't have to disappear to start fresh, I said. You can grow right here. You can reconnect, rebuild, rethink your path without leaving everything behind. He looked at me with a mixture of relief and thoughtfulness. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. "Maybe I just needed someone to remind me." We stood there for a moment, two familiar lives intersecting in a new and unexpected way. Not dramatic, not tangled, just honest. Two people realizing that connection can offer direction without crossing boundaries. He let out a soft breath. "Thank you," he said, "for hearing me, for not making me feel foolish." "You're not foolish," I replied. "You're just human, and you're allowed to grow, even at this stage in life." A small smile touched his face, one of genuine relief. "I think I'm going to stay," he said, "at least for now. I want to see if I can build something real here instead of running from the emptiness." "I think that's a good choice," I said. We walked together toward my car door, the tension now replaced with a quiet sense of closure. Before he stepped back, he offered a final grateful nod. "I'm glad I talked to you tonight." "So am I said. As I drove away, the garage lights fading in my rearview mirror, I felt a surprising sense of reflection settle over me. Daniel hadn't just found clarity, so had I. Life still held room for new understanding, new honesty, even at my age. And sometimes growth comes from the most unexpected conversations in the most unlikely places.